everybody. My name is Fazio. I work for WSU Extension. And so you've probably seen all our signs about the changes in event management. There's more on the back of the chairs. But I'm just going to walk you through if you're looking to use that mobile app, which we really encourage you to use. We've got definitely our most up-to-date information. So I'm showing you my screen up here on the screens. So I have the website pulled up, and you can use that QR code that's all over the place. If you have an iPhone, you can actually just pull it up in your camera, and if you have a relatively new operating system, Apple will just ask you if you want to open a link, which I find to be really convenient. So then it pulls you to this home screen, and your biggest concern is that agenda option that's second from the bottom. Obviously, you want to know where you want to go. And so you pull up this agenda. The good way, it'll filter it through the days up at the top here. And then also over on the right, there's this pull-down menu with all tracks. And so we have set up a few different tracks for the different rooms, or if you're you're interested in blueberries or raspberries particularly, or both Washington or Oregon pesticide credits are also in tracks there. And so if I pull up Dan's presentation today, it opens a little window here. I know it's kind of small, apologies, but up at the top there's a link to leave a review, which, as you also might have seen the signage, we're trying to encourage people to leave us reviews, because that's really great for us to really improve what we're offering here. So if you follow that leave a review link, it'll pull up a new screen, and it just gives you options to basically fill out a little quick survey. And then if you'd like to be entered in that in the gift card drawing, then you just pop in an email at the bottom here. And that will only be used, obviously, for the purpose of getting that gift certificate. We're not keeping your information for any reason. We're mostly interested in what you have to say about the quality and et cetera of the different presentations. And it's useful to speakers as well. So that's about all I have shown this quick how-to. Dan's actually also given us some great notes on his presentation if you're interested. So you can also find those linked here just below the review if you head into that app. So I think that's all I have to say. Obviously, come find us if you have any questions. If you're having trouble accessing the app, we can help you. So okay. Thanks for bearing with me. So now I'll bring up Dan Fazio. He's the CEO of WSU-Whatcom. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with his work. And he's going to give a talk here called Transitioning Your Workforce.
So I was driving over Stevens this morning about 5:30 and keeping to the speed limit, going 45 miles an hour. And there's a guy in an $80,000 pickup truck in front of me, and he went off the road and he was going 65 miles an hour. And so gave me an opportunity. I said, "Boy, you must have been coming to the Northwest Small Fruit Conference." But then I saw it was like an $80,000 pickup truck, and it could be y'all. That's my my kind of economic analysis when people ask me how's the farm economy doing. I say, well, you know, I go to a lot of events for apple growers, and I just look at the pickup trucks in the parking lot. And the last couple of years they've been pretty nice. And so you know, this year is supposed to be a little bit of a down year for tree fruit, apple, cherry, pear. And so I'm gonna get a contest and see if if my economic analysis holds true, and we start seeing 2 or 3 year old pickup trucks instead of a brand new one every year in the parking lot. So with that, labor unrest. Chris Benedict called me up and said, "Hey Dan, I need you to talk about what's going on." I said, I was hoping, I just quoted from his email to me, I was hoping to have you cover practical cans and can't use and find your farm in a situation similar to what happened with XYZ farms this year. Some historical context of labor unrest would be good as well. And I said to him, you know, I would be more, if I was a grower right now, I would be more concerned with the Social Security no match, e-verify, and immigration reform than I would be in the second paragraph. He said, well, you can talk about that too. I said, well, I don't know that we have enough time to talk about that. So just to cover that real briefly, you know, that they are going to reinstitute the Social Security no match letters again. And it is going to be a little bit more stringent than the last time they did them. In other words, they're going to ask you to actually do something to correct your Social Security no matches. So people that have issues with that, if you want to hit me with an email or go to our website and, you know, or any way you can, you should have a strategy to prepare for that, along with all the other 50 million things you have to do for labor-intensive agriculture, like paid family leave, paid medical leave, and all the other nice things that are being considered for your employees. Okay. Then they wanted me to give some statistics about H2A and a cost-benefit analysis, which is really easy to do. Do I have a pointer here?
Use the screen, or you.
So did it go away? Okay, that's good. I just want to. This is being broadcast over to Prosser in Vancouver, and so when I talk, they told me that they're going to give me a pointer. There you go. So there's the pointer, and there's the slide. Okay, so what's the problem? And the problem is that when we take us back 40 years, when the last time we did immigration reform, what the government said was that you're supposed to use this H-2A program if you have a shortage of willing, able, and qualified domestic applicants. And the only problem is the program was too hard to use, okay? And so no one used it, and people kept doing it, you know, the old way, and that, you know, which is to hire people that come to your farm and say that they're willing to work here. And as we know that, you know, upwards of, you know, back in at the turn of the century, it was upwards of 75% of the people that were coming to, you know, to do harvest type jobs or seasonal type agriculture jobs weren't qualified to work in America. And so that was the, you know, the problem. And so, you know, so they said, look, we're really serious now. We want you to use these programs, and we're gonna do something to crack down on the issue and do some immigration reform. And that was 20 years ago, and we haven't, you know, gotten to it, but I think we will. The problem for us is that it's a very expensive program, and it's loved by workers, the H-2A program, that is, and to a lesser extent the H-2B program, but it's opposed by labor advocates. And so that's kind of the issue, is that it's a very transparent program. So when you have a transparent program with a lot of regulations, and then there's a lot of opposition, that's what you get. So we tell people, you feel lucky. We have a saying at WAFLA that 80% of the people who use the H-2A program do it because they're forward-thinking companies that want to do the right thing, that are interested in, you know, 21st century solutions, and are interested in being transparent and are not afraid of regulations, and are going to grow with you know, grow their business. And then the other 20% that use it because no son of a gun in their right mind would ever work for them. So kind of a joke, but that, you know, that can happen. So we get, you know, two types of people that are interested in the H-2A program, and the vast majority of them are people that want to use the program. So let's look at the program nationwide. You can see that I just took a slide from 2014 to 2018. It's a little bit less dramatic of a slope. I think it's about a 20%, a little bit less than 20%, maybe 18, 19% internal growth rate from 2014 to 2018. If you back it out to 2010, it turns into about a 14% growth rate, but this is nationwide. So you can see where last year we're at 242,000 labor certifications for the H-2A program, which is a little bit more than double from 4 years previously. So basically we've doubled the use of the program nationwide in the last 4 years. And that's in the midst of of two administrations that were, kind of hostile to the program. The Obama administration certainly said that, that they made they didn't try to hide their hostility to the program, and it was, the policy of the Obama administration is that you should hire domestic workers. And then the Trump administration, which initially said to us that, not to us, but to the H-2A community, that if you want to use this program, we want you to make the economic case for why it's helpful. And that was not hard for us to do, because more workers on the bottom end in the jobs that people don't want to do creates more jobs for packing, production, more export, et cetera. So we were able to make that economic case, and so they've been okay to work with the Trump administration people. Their biggest problem was they have had a real hard time getting people in positions of authority, or filling their positions at the Department of Labor and at the Department of Homeland Security, that can actually, that Department of Homeland Security that can actually put the policies in place that we need to make the program grow. So that's the H-2A program nationwide. And if you flip it over and look at the state of Washington, it's nothing short of dramatic. And even if you go back 4 years from that, from 2010 on, it goes from about 3,000 to 9,000, and 9,000 to 25,000. So last year, you can see we had 24,868 positions certified. That's in the state of Washington. We're seeing similar growth in the state of Oregon, except that they're starting from zero. So Oregon went from like 1,500 H-2As last year to 2,500 H-2As. So they had a 60% jump, but it's easier to make a 60% jump down there when they're starting from such a lower level. So that's currently what's going on, and I think a lot of this reflects tree food. We're going to take a look now. I got a cost benefit slide just to put it into perspective a little bit. What do you get as a farmer? You get a stable and legal seasonal workforce, and you get workers that absolutely love the program. I've got lots of people that use different kinds of contracts. The most popular one is to bring people up here for a long period of time, and then if they don't need the workers if the workers aren't needed for a short period of time in there, there'll be certain layoffs for the seasonal for the foreign workers, and the foreign workers actually go home for a week or two and then come back, so that we can get all the domestic workers all the jobs they want. But the farm workers absolutely love the program because they don't have to be looking over their shoulders. They're here legally. They've got a visa. They can take a weekend off and fly back home. And then of course the benefits in terms of they have a contract. They know what they're supposed to do in the contract, et cetera. So the disadvantages or the farmers get that stable and legal workforce in exchange for you've got to recruit domestic workers first. There's more regulations. People tell me that they feel like there's a target on their back. And I say, absolutely. If you don't have good HR practices, that's not a good program for you. You pay a higher wage. That's disputed by by some people, but I don't think that when you put the numbers on a piece of paper, I don't think you can dispute it. But I was told that there were some protesters out there that say that you're paying a lower wage to use the program, and they should talk to some people that use the program. So, and then of course, what causes the wages to be higher is that you have to pay for workers' travel costs and provide housing for them. So, providing housing and transportation up here, it's not that hard to do, but there are a couple of regulations. You're basically, instead of at-will employment, which you are in if you're not in the H-2A program, you're in a contract position where it's called a for-cause employment. So you can't terminate a person at will. You have to have cause to terminate. And that's the summary of the regulation. So summary: high cost and lots of paperwork, but the best option we've got. And how do you mitigate costs? Transfer workers from contract to contract. We're actively doing that. Where people there's a hop grower that needs people to come in and prepare his hops from March through June. He's built housing in Oregon. and then he needs the workers back on August 15th. So you know anyone who needs workers from June through August 15th? Yeah, all the blueberry growers in that Willamette Valley. That's exactly their period of need. So the workers stay right where they are. This housing that's built by a hop grower in the Willamette Valley. The workers are at, but they go to work at a different farm, and then basically we divide the cost of the contract from one grower, to two people, and it works out really well if the farmers are simpatico, if they have a good working relationship, which that's what we always look for. And then we tell people that you should have a longer contract because there is a significant tax savings associated with the program. You don't pay payroll taxes. You don't pay Social Security. You don't pay unemployment. You don't pay SUDA-FUDA or the Medicare taxes. And if you look at it, if you have a person up here for 4 months, that's a tax savings of $1,200. If you have a person here for 8 months, that's almost a $2,500 tax saving as compared to hiring a person just off the street. So the program pays for itself. And to come up with this figure, there's a couple of estimates. We estimated that you had a 3% unemployment insurance rate, which I think most people have about that, because you don't have to pay the unemployment insurance. And we estimated that the worker was going to work approximately 45 hours a week and earn about $15 an hour. And so with that, with that estimate, if a worker's here for anything more than 4 months, the program basically pays for itself. So that's how people are mitigating costs. Longer contracts, and then if they need to use short contracts, teaming up with someone else. I think I wanted to stop for questions before we get into the mitigating labor unrest. Any questions at this time?
Do you co-mingle H-2A and H-2B visas?
Commingle, the question is for people in Prosser, I know you're going to yell at me for that. The question for people in Prosser and Vancouver is, can you commingle H-2A and H-2B visas? And the answer is that you can't commingle the visas, but a person can work on an H-2A visa. They could be up here, and then they can move over to an H-2B account. And there are people that let me just back up a little bit and talk about the difference between H-2A and H-2B. H-2A is seasonal agriculture workers visas, okay? And so it's a seasonal agriculture worker program. H-2B is seasonal or contract related non-agriculture. So the H-2B could be anywhere from a reforestation worker. We've got people in here on H-2B visas. We did about 20 H-2B visas this year for people. So we've got guys that cut boughs, make Christmas tree wreaths. We've got people that are making wreaths. We've got landscape professionals that are pushing a lawnmower in the H-2B program. Hospitality industry, we don't do any, but they use the H-2B program. We're even looking at a program right now where WAFLA is going to try and work with the Department of Labor and the Department of Homeland Security to bring a substantial number of electricians, certified electricians from Canada down to Quincy, and Wenatchee to build some data centers. So any contract-related type of industry or a seasonal industry that's non-agricultural. Where we get some overlap is that picking an apple is agriculture. Packing that apple is non-agriculture if the packing house serves many different growers. So if more than 50% of the crop is the crop that you grew and you're packing, then you can use H-2A workers in both the packing house and the picking parts of the job. If you are a large packing house, blueberries, apples, whatever, and marketing, packing for lots of different farms, you're not considered agriculture, you're considered more commercial manufacturing. So then you would have to use H-2B. The other reason people are interested in H-2B is it's a little bit more cost effective than the H-2A. The hourly wage is generally lower, and the employer, this is very, very substantial for people, is not responsible to pay for housing. So the worker comes up here and the worker gets their own housing. You can actually build the housing and then rent the housing to the worker, or you can tell them, look, why don't you just go get housing at a hotel or motel or something like that. And as a matter of fact, WAFLA is a partner in a large hotel complex in Yakima where we're housing people that work in the packing houses in the Yakima area. So good question. The answer is that you can't work on both H2A and H2B simultaneously because they're different types of jobs, okay? But you can finish an H2A contract, and instead of going back home and incurring the approximately $1,000 of cost, getting back and forth and getting through customs and getting through the State Department processes, you can just go from your H2A contract to your H2B contract. So a long answer to a short question, but an important way to talk about those two programs. The principal thing people are worried about up here is labor unrest. And people are saying that the circumstances for using the program are different in Western Washington than Eastern Washington. I don't personally believe that. I think that it's just a little bit harder to do labor-intensive agriculture in Western Washington because land costs are higher, housing costs are higher, and you don't have as much of the labor-intensive agriculture here in Western Washington. We've got a dozen, 12 H2A contracts in Western Washington that are going, and they're doing quite well. As a matter of fact, the first and the longest lasting H2A contract in Washington State is right in this area. Does H2A promote unrest, and how should labor unrest be handled when it involves H2A workers? Those are the kind of the core questions that Chris Benedek from wanted me to address. So it's kind of an East versus West type thing. Any other questions before I get involved in that? Okay. So did a little chart. We got a community mapping. I've got some 20-somethings working for me, and so they get these programs on websites. And so I told them to just map out all the H2A sites. And this is not really indicative of how disproportionate it is, because like this one right here, that's really 2,500 workers, and then down here. That's 4,000 workers. I mean, and this one here is only 250 workers, and these are, like 100 or 50 workers. So I don't think that they got the scale too right, but it gives you the idea that what we're trying to show here is that there's a lot more H2A in Eastern Washington and Western Washington. There are about 300 growers that use the H2A program statewide. So. What's the reason for the difference? It's just that there's a lot more labor-intensive agriculture on the east side. I mean, it's not rocket science. Housing is cheaper to build, and you could say that the state has actually really supported it more, in that I counted a dozen state-supported housing projects on the west side. On the east side, and there are none over here. The one over here that we have, I think, is only for long-term people. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that Strawberry Hill facility, is that for migrant seasonal housing? That the government housing facility that we have over here. People don't know about it, but I can rattle off, and I think I put it in one of the slides, a dozen housing projects where the state of Washington has contributed close to $50 million for building housing for migrant seasonal workers. And so, I think it boils down to it's just harder to farm on the west side. I mean, it's the same thing happening in the Willamette Valley, where there's more people, there's more restrictions, land costs are higher. I don't know if the crops are any higher margin or not. That's for you all to decide. But we do know that I'm specifically, when I say higher margin crops, question mark, I'm specifically looking at row crop which uses the H2A program. We've got, row crop in the, the Seattle or Seattle-Tacoma area that uses H2A, and then of course just east of Portland got some, row crop, and they're having a really hard time competing because their margins are just razor thin. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're growing a lot of, green onions and tomatoes and things like that in Mexico, which they're having hard, and they're getting beat up by their, by their suppliers on that. Whereas the apple and cherry guys don't have that, as tough of a margin problem. So people also always like to look at ag type. In the east, you've got apples, cherries, pears, hops are the predominant users of H2A program. On the west side, berries and row crops are the predominant users. The people who would love to use the H2A, and we're actually doing some H2A for, are the seafood guys. They're in a very, very damaging situation where they need lots of workers. And we've got seafood guys up here, then down in Willapa Bay that need a lot of workers, and they have a big problem. So we're trying to use the H2A program with those guys, and we're using H2B and H2A in those places because some of their jobs are a little bit different. But currently H2A not useful for dairies because it's not seasonal. So and we have quite a bit of dairy over here as well. So those are the ag types that we use, and it's skewed to those tree fruit people over on the east side. The housing difference, I alluded to this. It's just so much more expensive and more subject to NIMBY issues, not in my backyard type of issues, which we have in every housing program. WAFLA is involved in 4 housing projects right now, and we've had to, it's very, very discouraging to sit in a hearing with the land use people in a very small agricultural town and have people say very, very derogatory things about the Hispanic workforce, and these are places where I would have sworn would be very, very, very pro-agriculture, and sometimes those sentiments come out, and so we get those NIMBY issues on the east side, but a lot more on the west side. I said that I would tell you about the housing facilities. These housing facilities I've listed: Fairbridge Inn and state-funded. Fairbridge Inn is a private hotel that has the ability to accommodate up to 900 agricultural workers. WAFLA and a couple farmers bought a hotel and just converted it. It's really working out very, very well for us. And then if you look, there are state-funded projects in Granger, Pasco, Othello, Wenatchee, Cashmere, Chelan, Omak, Orville, and Matawan. I left out 1 or 2 of them because they were too small, but those projects represent 2,500 beds. So, and I haven't seen a similar investment on the west side of the state. So that is definitely a difference for the program. Questions? Do you have the ability to get questions from Vancouver or Pasco?
You text me and I'll give it to you.
Oh, okay. So if Pasco or Vancouver want to send in a question, they should text and they know the number. Okay, perfect. Okay, so fortunately I don't have a clock here, but I think I'm on track here. So the next half of the talk, I'm going to talk about the labor unrest issues and what you can do about it. So the question is, does H2A promote labor unrest? And the answer is yes, and that's because you're above board. You are saying, you're putting yourself out there and saying, I am filing this application, and I'm not going to try and go below the radar, okay? Which is what most small businesses would like to be, below the radar. As a person that runs a small business myself, I don't really want a lot of interaction with government, and I don't want my name on websites and things like that. So to the extent that you are not going to be below the radar, that's how it would promote labor unrest. Okay, so you do have more regulations. The flip side is you're not in the H2A program. You don't have to abide by MISPA for the H2A people, but MISPA is the Migrant Seasonal Farm Worker Protection Act. but the regulations in H-2A are mirror MISPA. So you have, I think, more regulations because both the H-2A regulations and MISPA apply to your domestic workforce. And in all reality, you're going to comply with both MISPA and and the H-2A regulations. So I would say that there are more regulations with when you use the H-2A programs. The labor advocates who are opposed to H-2A like to tell legislators and regulators that there are less regulations, and I don't think that that's a true statement, and so we'll just leave it at that. So you have to watch out for your impacts on your domestic workforce. So always you're looking, you cannot discriminate in favor of your foreign workers. Query, can you discriminate in favor of your domestic workforce? And you might be able to, in some rare instances, actually promote give a better deal to the domestic workers than the foreign workers. Most people just say, let's treat everyone equally. And then this is where we I'll just propound on that a little bit, in that the domestic workforce says that the farmer prefers the foreign worker because the foreign worker can only work for them and really wants that job and really wants to do whatever they can to keep that job and keep coming back. When we interview the foreign workers, they say, look, I don't want to monkey with anything that is going to get me to not be able to come back here. And some of the folks that we recruit have worked in other states in America, and they say by far Washington and Oregon are the best place to work. So kudos to you guys for creating a great workforce. As a matter of fact, one of our recruiters told me, guys, if the farmer in Washington doesn't want the worker back because they haven't hit their performance measures, we have a motto down here, and it's North Carolina is nice this time of year, and that's kind of a joke in that it's not as nice there. I've seen some of the housing. I've been, no offense to my friends in North Carolina, but it's 95 degrees in the shade and 95% humidity. You guys are picking tobacco and sweet potatoes and things like that are very, 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 very tough work. So the biggest dynamic that I hear from employers is, and this is especially the Apple guys, they said, Dan, we were accustomed to a time when labor was plentiful. And if we needed workers, we just put up a sign that said pickers wanted, and 50 guys showed up. And that was because a lot of people came here in the 80s in an undocumented way, and they were drawn to agriculture, okay? And that proliferation of labor benefited our economy because we got to build homes and we got to pick apples, and those industries flourished. But it didn't make for the right dynamic between the employer and the worker. So the workers that are coming now in the H-2A program, they want to be your employee. They want to be fully part of your organization. They don't want to be a pickers wanted. I'll come here, I'll get as much money as I can, and then I'll go to my next gig. And so it's caused the really successful businesses have really adapted to this changing dynamic in the way you handle your seasonal workforce, in that it's more just like your full-time workforce. And so it's created these longer contracts that people have, which are economically beneficial. You saw on that slide. And so whereas they used to have people come, I need some people to thin, okay? And they'll come for 3 or 4 weeks, and then we don't need anyone in May because all the thinning's done, okay? And then, all the pruning's done in February, March. Then we need thinners to come in June, and so we just need people for a couple weeks there. And then they can leave in late July, and then we need them back at the end of August and September for harvest. That's kind of going away, and people are are having the seasonal workforce be more of a 5, 6, 7 month workforce, and that's kind of the dynamic. the regulations are getting tougher. And, like right now, if you do not have an arbitration agreement, which every person that comes to that you hire signs when you hire them, you're standing yourself into danger, okay? So because these class action laws, the Supreme Court ruled more than a year ago that arbitration agreements are legal and you can require each employee to separately arbitrate any dispute they have with you, any labor dispute they have with you. If you don't have that agreement, every person here in Vancouver and Prosser is at risk of having a class action lawsuit, and class action lawsuits can cost easily 7 figures, over $1 million, because you're paying the legal bill for the person who sued you, you're paying your legal bill, and you're paying, every person. A class action lawsuit is one, and we have one going on right now in Whatcom County, where the class has not been certified yet, where they allege that there's something that the employer is doing wrong to every person. They're not paying the minimum wage to every person that comes here. They're not giving rest breaks to every person that comes here. They're systematically allowing sexual harassment to happen. So those regulations, are getting more and more numerous. They're not responding to these rest breaks or meal periods that I hope you guys are following what's going on with those things for piece rate work. But we have some old school supervisors who are not used to those regulations, and again, I already spoke about this. The relative proliferation of low-cost workers make compliance with labor regulations somewhat optional. That's really what people are asking themselves, and in a regulatory framework, we're people. When you have an abundance of labor, that kind of things happen. Or are there just more regulations? And I think it's a combination of the fact that undoubtedly there are a lot more regulations. Lastly, workers know their rights, and I don't think you should ever count on it as a business model, workers not knowing what their rights are. I think sometimes the problem is that the workers know their rights better than the employers do. So Labor and Industries did a targeted kind of occupational safety and health checkup of agriculture this summer, focused on H2A employers, and they called us up and we had a meeting with them, and they're going to present at our H2A conference on January 25th in Yakima. And they said that they were so impressed with the compliance of OSHA type regulations by the H2A growers compared to the people who are not in the H2A program. Of course, the Employment Securities Department in Washington State is the main regulatory agency for the H2A program, and then the Federal Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division gets involved as well. So that's the regulations. The existing workforce absolutely feels threatened. I don't know if threatened is the right word, in that, look, every employer wants to have, when they put up a help wanted sign, they want 20 people to respond to it. Every worker wants to, when they're going in for a job, to have 20 options to do the job, options of employment. The idea is to get a balance, right? So that, we have enough workers, but we don't have too many workers or too few workers. So the existing workforce says we want a labor shortage, because if we have a labor shortage, then you have to compete with you and you and you to the workers, and you have to drive up prices or wages, okay? So, what we saw in 2006 in Washington State, when we didn't have the H2A program, is we left a lot of apples on the ground. We had insufficient people were doing bidding wars for the workers. And that's why we formed WAFLA in 2007 to respond to that. By 2012, when we had our first really, really huge apple crop, we were able to bring in that crop because we had approximately 9,000 H2A workers helping bring in that crop, and we never would have brought that crop in without it. Last year, we were in a situation where we had close to 25,000 labor certifications. and we had a very, very good labor parity. People could get a job if they wanted to, but there weren't there weren't any extra workers, but and there weren't people there weren't these mad bidding up of prices. So our idea is that, that we should use this program to get labor parity. And, I've heard growers that are in the H2A program say, if you're not in the H2A program, you should send a thank you note to the grower across the street who's using the program, because bringing in the workers to allow the existing domestic workforce to be able to go to other employers. So short way of saying that we all know that competition for workers is what's going to drive your wages higher, and so if we can have labor parity, that would be what we're interested in. Activists who claim to represent workers have openly called for the end of the program, but H2A workers don't want it to end. So that's their problem. That's their disconnect. That's their cross to bear, if you will. And so you see them say things like, this is Farm Worker Justice, which is a national firm that in Washington, D.C. that says that they represent farm workers, and they and we've been lobbying for to make the changes to the H2A program to make it more usable, and they don't like that. And there's their comment from their Twitter feed. So the dynamic that we have to face is the public, and the thing that makes this a really, really strong uphill battle is it's not news that things are working well. No one writes an article that says no one died at the coal mine today, right? Everyone wants to write the article that says 50 coal miners died because the farmer, the coal operator didn't follow OSHA regulations, and therefore the mine caved in, right? So that's the dynamic that we face. It's easier to say something's wrong than something is working, and our job is to make things work. And so, you hear these outlandish statements from the left and the right. Representative Kim Schreier, who represents the Washington 8th District, which goes Misquah up through Wenatchee, made a statement publicly that H2A is indentured servitude. I wrote her a letter and said I was very, very deeply saddened by that statement, and it was very hurtful. I said, it would be, like someone saying that, anyway, I mean, indentured servitude means, basically is one step from slavery, right? And to make that statement is outlandish for a U.S. government elected official. And so we're going to meet with her and see if she can walk that back. She took it from, a Farm Worker Justice article, which called H2A indentured servitude. So that's that. Equally, outlandish is, lots of people on the right side of the ledger saying that these guys are coming here to take American jobs, and that's not the case. There's oodles of regulations built in to give jobs to any willing, able, and qualified domestic workers. So we've got this dynamic on the left and right. The left calling H2A indentured servitude, the right wing saying that that the foreign workers will come here to take American jobs, and your job is to tell people that everything is running well, and this is the system that we're supposed to use, and that just doesn't make headlines, right? I mean, there's no headline in the fact that the apple crop, the apple harvest went very well this year. We had plenty of workers, wages were good but not fantastic, and the crop came in without incident. Where's that? That doesn't make news, okay? They asked me to talk about a strike, which wasn't really a strike, that happened last summer up in Whatcom, and so I took a couple of posts from the left-wing guys' website. I don't live in Bellingham, but I'd like to donate. Is there an online method? Thanks in solidarity. And then and this one here, they wanted to have a citizen's arrest for the farmer because the farm workers had grievances. Okay, so that's the kind of stuff that we see. We follow their posts, and yeah. So that's enough for that. How hard is it to do the H2A program? It's not hard at all if you follow the regulations. You know, you can run into challenging situations, but by and large, we're getting good results. Okay. And the principal reason that the program works is because the workers want to protect their right to come here. So if you can sit down with the workers and get the intervening forces out of there, you can handle any issues, and that's kind of what we're working to do. Okay, so they asked me to talk about case studies: Farm 1 in Whatcom County in 2017, Farm 2 in Grant County in 2017, and Farm 3 in Whatcom County in 2018, where the previously alluded to strike occurred. So what happened here? So in Whatcom in 2017, they said that there was poor working conditions and poor management. And then over in Grant County, they said the workers alleged. Interestingly enough, the farm in Whatcom County and the farm in Grant County in 2017, these workers knew each other. They were some of the workers from here were relatives with some of the guys over here. So that was kind of an interesting phenomenon. And the grievances were in Grant County were that they weren't paid on time, that they had unreasonable production quotas. You're not supposed to have production quotas in the H2A program, but everyone knows that the quality and quantity of work that you produce is something that you grade workers on. And we've, because of this incident, we developed a grading system that's been signed off by the state guys. And you can grade people on quality, quantity, how well they get along with people. And you should do that for your seasonal workforce every week. And you have a very good mechanism to do that. It's called their weekly paycheck or their bi-weekly paycheck, where when you give a person a paycheck, you say this is how you grade it out amongst your peers over the last pay period. And then at the end of the season, you should be giving seasonal workers a piece of paper that says eligible for reemployment or not eligible for reemployment. A lot of employers are doing that now. Finally, Farm 3 in Whatcom County, the previously alluded to strike. They said that they weren't paid on time. There were unreasonable production quotas, poor working conditions. They said that they had to sit out, and then they weren't getting enough hours, and that was kind of we lumped that into poor management. So those were the grievances that happened. And how was it resolved? So in Farm 1, the employer terminated the workers, which we personally didn't agree with. I don't know that that's they said the workers didn't show up for work, and so therefore we're exercising our right under the H2A contract to terminate the workers. I don't think that that's the best thing to do, because I think workers still have a right to collectively bargain and strike and do those things, whether they're in the H2A program or not. So the employer terminated the workers and then said, look, since you've been terminated, we don't have to pay your way home, but we will if you want to voluntarily resign, and then we'll pay you. We'll give you some money in exchange in addition to that to get for your transportation. The workers agreed. They said, this strike isn't going anywhere. We're sitting around doing nothing. We just prefer to go home. It would have been better if they went back to work instead of going home. But a lot of times when people get in transient, they felt like they couldn't save face by going back to work, which some of them did, and a lot of people wanted to do. It was like 74 workers out of 500 that actually quote struck, and then went, and then a lesser number, about 70, went home. And what precipitated this was a very tragic accident, in that a person died of diabetes, right? I mean, and there were smoke conditions in the area. It was, the workers said it's unhealthy for us to work. There was forest fires up in BC that were happening, and the workers initially thought that the worker died due to smoke inhalation or overwork or something like that. And so, that's a tremendously traumatic thing to happen to one of your brethren, one of your people that you're working with. A person, gets sick and drops down on the ground. You have to rush him to the emergency room. And so that's what precipitated the strike. So I really felt like if we could have gotten the workers together and not gotten them into this intransigent position and explained to them that this was a pre-existing health condition, then we would have had a little bit more luck up there. WAFLA wasn't involved in that particular contract, but we like to talk to the employers anyway. So we were talking to the employers to see how we could assist in any way possible, even though we weren't. It was a farm that was handling their own contract. So the workers were terminated and then offered transportation home. In Grant County, the employer was very, very interested in quickly negotiating an agreement to get the workers back to work. Which they negotiated the agreement with the labor union, and so they gave money to the labor union, and then the labor union gave money to the workers to go back to work, and they had an agreement which said that they guaranteed the workers, or the workers thought that they were guaranteed the right to come back here next year, okay, which is something that really I don't know that you can do as an employer, guarantee people the right to come back to the H-2A program, because you might not get the visas next year. So guaranteeing, I think I lost the microphone, but oh, it's still here. Okay, there you go. So the employer negotiated an agreement with the labor union. They wanted to get the workers back. They got the workers back in 3 days' time. WAFLA was involved in that when we sent people out to work, talk to the workers. We didn't think it was a great idea to on that agreement. The farmer said, "Look, we're a very, very large farm. We can take it from here." And we said, "Fine, thank you very much." And so they did that. And then we had a small farm in Whatcom County this year, and the grower contacted us and asked us to work directly with the workers. And we have a little bit more luck to working with the workers because we know the recruiters. We can get the recruiter up here. We have a relationship with the workers from down in Mexico that perhaps the employer didn't have. And so we had a meeting with also was a smaller group, so we could have a meeting with the workers directly, with WAFLA representatives, and then a representative from the recruiter that we brought, that had recruited the workers. And, we said to him, "Look, you can do what you want, but we think it would be a good idea to return to work." And so they went back to work, and we didn't have to sign any kind of a contract or settlement agreements, get labor unions or lawyers involved. And that obviously is the preferential way to resolve these things. So the end result is there's a big class action lawsuit going on right now in Whatcom County where the workers are saying that they were terminated illegally because they collectively were bargaining collectively or were exercising their right to unionize. And so they filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of those workers. And class action law, the class has not been certified. The employer is very, very aggressive, and good for them. They're fighting. They're fighting it, and so it's a very, very protracted legal type of issue. The second one, the farm in Grant County, the farmer, for whatever reason, did not offer reemployment to the workers. And with good reason. I mean, the farmer might have had good reason if the workers didn't perform or follow the regulations that were set forth. There was nothing in the agreement that said they had to employ them. However, they felt the best thing to do was just to settle the lawsuit very quickly for a small amount of money. It was not a class action lawsuit. It was just a group of workers saying, "Hey." 18 workers said, we were promised to come back here, and we can show that you excluded us from bringing us back this year. And we can show that you didn't tell WAFLA, you told the recruiters not to hire us back. And the employer said, "That's garbage. I didn't tell anyone to do anything. I just chose to not bring you back." Of course, and from WAFLA's standpoint, I wasn't going to say, "Hey, these guys didn't work out at your farm last year, so I'm going to call up you and say, hey,
there were 18 guys last year that struck over at their farm. How would you like to hire them? Of course, we're not in that kind of business where we do that kind of thing. That's the employer's relationship with their worker, and we're not gonna take those workers that have not performed well at one farm and force them on another employer. I'm just about done here. So the Whatcom County farm, the workers returned to work. We've been in contact with the worker. They want to come back to work. They don't want to come back to work at this farm, and they want to go somewhere else. They said we did a great job. We performed well. The farmer said, yeah, I'll take them back, or someone else can have them. I don't care. We, knock on wood, we think that there's been no issues so far. But just getting back to my earlier comments, this farm was one of the ones that was selected by LNI for an OSHA kind of inspection. And we can't say that it was because of this, but whenever there's labor unrest, the labor unions call up the regulatory agencies and they ask them to do inspections. And it just so happened that LNI was doing a lot of OSHA type inspections as well at farms. So they had an LNI OSHA inspection, and they have not gotten the results of the OSHA inspection. I think that there was a few OSHA issues on the farm, and so they're probably going to get fined for some of those OSHA issues. So the lessons learned are address small concerns before they can spiral out of control. We've really learned this thing. The workers are going to, if they have a problem, they're going to contact you and your supervisors, and you should take that seriously. We bought a hotel this summer, and we served meals, and the breakfast and the dinner were great meals, and the lunch was not very good. And as soon as we found out that the lunch was not very good, I had a couple of waffle employees up there at 3:30 in the morning at breakfast because they were picking cherries, talking to the guys, saying, hey, we're going to improve. We're looking at the bag lunch we're giving you. We're going to increase the quality and the quantity of that bag lunch. And they said, thank you very much. So address small concerns, because I did not want legal services coming in there and saying this was a terrible chicken sandwich that had, whatever. So the other lesson learned is we negotiate directly with the workers, not the outside reps. And we always talk to the workers about it. The farmer wants you to come back to work, and you want to come back to work. How do we make that work for both of you? And and that's what our guys are trained to do. So that's my talk. I think I nailed it pretty much on the head. Any questions about labor unrest? Any questions about labor issues? Anyone know a good joke? Great. Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me, Henry, and guys from USDA.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. We're headed into a break, and then this room is going to be, there won't be a session in this room upcoming, and because you can head over and see, we've got a couple of really great keynotes. The dean of the WSU Connors School is going to be talking over there. So yeah, if you just want to take a break, get some refreshments, and then you can meet up over in the CHS room. Thanks.